Welcome back to Trinidad and Tobago. And at this time, what we're going to do is share with you some of the experts. The Minister of Labour is on the Morning Brew, Jennifer Baptiste-Primus. She was a former Labour leader. When I was a beat reporter, I remember covering assignments when she was beating the pavement and holding governments accountable. Today, she sits on the flip side, looking on, and also charged with the responsibility of finding the middle ground between Labour, business, and government, if that is even possible. But let's share with you some of the big announcements made by the Minister of Finance, including minimum wage and the OJT numbers.
The minimum wage. Madam Speaker, I propose to increase the minimum wage from $15 an hour to $17.50 per hour. This measure will benefit approximately 194,000 persons in the workforce and will take effect from December the 1st, 2019. I propose to increase the OJT program stipends by 10% and to increase the intake for the program to 8,000 trainees. This measure will take effect on December the 1st, 2019.
Welcome back to Trinidad and Tobago. Now, this time, the two big announcements. Minister, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Hima. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Now, let's go straight into the increase in minimum wage from $15 to $17.50. According to the Minister of Finance, it's going to benefit 194,000.
And exactly, the Minister of Finance, Hima, did not pull $17.50 out of the air and decided to increase the minimum wage. There is a board that is called the Minimum Wages Board, and the Minimum Wages Board advises the Minister of Labour with regards to any increases in the minimum wage. And therefore, in September, earlier this year, the Minimum Wages Board, headed by Ms. Judith Sobian, would have submitted a recommendation to the Minister of Labour, to myself. I would then, in June, have taken a note to Cabinet recommending that the minimum wage be increased from $15 to $18.25. So that recommendation was made to Cabinet. The Minister of Finance would have crunched the numbers and would have identified $17.50 as the new minimum wage by which the economy could take that increase. The $18.25 was a little bit too steep, and therefore an incremental move would have been made from $15 to $17.50. Now, he might want to address a point of view that certain persons in the society, mainly from the opposition, have been making, that the increase is negligible.
Because if you look at
but you have to look at the fact that these are workers at the lowest rung of the ladder, and the movement from $15 to $17.50, $2.50, helps the minimum wage earner to carry home a little more in his or her pay packet. Once the economy could have taken an $18.25 increase, we would have done that. It is just not possible at this particular point in time. And let me point out, the naysayers who are critiquing the Minister of Finance for this increase, when you go down at ground level and you speak to the workers, they are happy with the increase.
Because I wanted to ask you that, Minister. A quick look at the math. $17.50 by 8 multiplied by 5 multiplied by 4.5, let's say 4.5 weeks in a month, we'll get a figure of just over $3,000. Considering the cost of living, and I'm sure in factoring all of these recommendations, the committee would have looked at the cost of living, the standard of living.
Look at the basket of goods.
Right, so you look at the basket of goods. To many, $3,150 simply is not enough to survive in this country.
Hima, and one would agree with that, but that is what could be afforded at this point in time. And as time goes on, I am quite sure the Minister of Finance would take another look at it. As a matter of fact, the Minimum Wages Board, which is headed by Ms. Judith Sobian, they are now in the process of arranging to have a survey conducted nationally, the outcome of which would be tabled to Cabinet.
I also want to ask you on the flip side of this. So you have some persons saying that it's not enough, but then you have some smaller businesses, service-oriented businesses, saying that with what they see as the precipitous decline in the economy, that they are labor-intensive, that they also cannot afford to pay the extra $2.50. That where are they going to get the money with reducing sales and shrinking business bases?
Hema, in my former incarnation as the president of the Public Services Credit Union, and that is many years ago, I spent in the trade union arena over 30 years. Every time there is an increase in salary, there's a cry from the business sector, we cannot carry it because it will increase our costs. There is room for the employers to sit with the workers or with the trade union to discuss how there can be a concomitant increase in productivity.
No, before I pick you up on the productivity, even in my introduction, I made reference to your former incarnation in the union. If you were a union leader today, would you have accepted government coming with $17.50 minimum wage, a $2.50 increase with the cost of living that we face now?
Hema, you may not be satisfied with what is on the table, but you live to survive another day.
Now also, listening to that statement, Minister Batiste Primus, you sit in an interesting, because people expect you to represent still the grassroots, the people that you once represented, now you sit with everyone else. Do you think you can tell people when they go to the grocery or when they go to pay their bills that we live to see another day?
Right,
how do they find consolation
Let
in
me
that?
share this with you, Hema. I'm happy you have asked that question. When we go to the grocery, Hema, you know what we purchase? We purchase luxury items, one that is bad for our health, so that when you hear people talk about the price of food is too high, look at the items that are being purchased. Foreign goods, goods that are not healthy for us. I could share with you at a personal level. My husband and I, we have cut down, almost 2 years now, we have cut down on our grocery bill, and we have increased our spending in the market. Because at the end of the day, you go to the grocery, your trolley pile high with groceries, but look at those items. Do we need these items? How are these items contributing to our wellness as human beings? So my advice, Hema, would be cut down on those articles of food that are not important, that does not add value to your life, and increase your spending in the market where our local producers will be able to sell more.
Now, Minister, we do have to take a quick break. When we come back, we dissect the OJT program, and the Minister saying that it was a middle point. That is what the economy could afford. She's standing by the position. Some will argue that $20 should have been given. We'll ask her to respond to that, and also the OJT program, and there's so much more. The Minister of Labour is on the Morning Brew. Stay with us. That's enough.
Open up to possibility. Memorable moments are only minutes away. It all starts with a Nescafe.
Trinray, premier insurance coverage for less.
Once again, the countdown has begun and time is running out. Make this season even more epic. Jumpstart your Christmas with a chance to win a $30,000 shopping spree at Quartz Optical, Ashley, Radio Shack, or Lucky Dollar when you spend $9.99 and over with nothing down and nothing to pay for 90 days. Don't wait any longer. Only at Quartz, bringing value home. Offer ends November 16, 2019. See in store for details.
Seaview Optical Frame Fiesta Sale. Get your free designer frames with the purchase of progressive or bifocal transition lenses. Free spectacle frames such as Calvin Klein, Guess, Nautica, Nine West, and many more. See in store for more specials. Special conditions apply. Tile Expression Diwali Tile Sale now open on Sundays, 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. 12 by 12, $395. 17 by 17, $695. 18 by 18, $750. 20 by 20, $995. Micro milling thin set, $37. New arrivals from Italy, Spain, Brazil, and China. Monroe Road, Canupia. Telephone 693-0015 or 223 Tile.
He was from a distant village. She wanted her favorite movies and TV shows. It was love at first sight. DirecTV Prepaid. All your favorite channels. Top up from as low as $55. Installation anywhere in TNT. No bill too high, but DirecTV Prepaid production. Call DirecTV today and start turning on to No Drama TV.
Whoever said growing old had to be boring never spent a day at Shady Meadows with these guys.
One for me, one for you, and one for you.
Do you know what happens when you mix prescription drugs and alcohol?
Yeah, a good time.
Do you mind?
Look, lady, I don't know who you are, but you can't sit there.
Why not? Who are you guys? The cool kids?
Damn straight we are.
The Cool Kids, Sundays at 8 p.m. on CNC3.
Good morning, I'm Jessime Vento. This is Headline News from Guardian Media, brought to you by CNC3, the TBC Radio Network, and the Guardian newspaper. Political leader of the MSJ, David Abdullah, is refuting claims by opposition MP Dr. Rudal Munilal of conspiracy and corruption in the OWTU's bid for the Petrotrin refinery. And he's challenging Dr. Munilal to make the same statements outside of the cover of parliamentary privilege. During his contribution to the 2020 budget debate yesterday, the opposition MP alleged that it was a former PNM candidate who facilitated the meeting between the OWTU and John Van Dyke of Sunstone Equity, the company which reportedly assisted the OWTU in becoming the preferred bidder for the Pointe-a-Pierre refinery. In October 2018, the OWTU revealed that Sunstone Equity assisted the union in producing a lease-to-own plan for the refinery. David Abdullah is accusing the opposition of trying to muddy the waters and create mischief and confusion where there is none. He asserts due process was followed during every step of the transaction and says there's nothing to fear if a probe is carried out.
The union spent money in order to put together that bid, and the union, when the non-disclosure clauses are lifted, I'm sure will say where the money is coming from, who are the consultants, who are the auditing firm that has been involved in it, who are the technical people who have been advising them from an engineering and refining operating point of view, and so on, who will be the management coming in. All of those things will become known.
Would you welcome an investigation?
Sunstone and all those things that Dr. Mullah spoke about are not in the picture whatsoever.
And David Abdullah also rubbishes claims that the sale of the refinery to Patriotic Energies and Technologies Limited is nothing but an election gift to the labour movement.
My consistent position, individually and as MSJ, was that the refinery should never be closed down. The workers, all the workers in Petrotrin who were sent home, because every single worker was retrenched, that should not have happened. And you see, if you want to really check what the real story is about the closure of the refinery, check the central bank quarterly report that was issued at the end of September, which said that there was an 8.2% increase in forex sales to energy companies as a result of the startup of a new fuel trading company occasioned by the closure of the country's only refinery. And so our forex position has been worsened by the government's decision to close down Petrotrin and setting up Paria and so on. Those are the issues that the opposition should be raising.
Further afield, rescue workers are working against the clock to find 8 residents who are missing after their apartment block collapsed in the city of Fortaleza in northeastern Brazil. One man died when the 7-story building crumbled on Tuesday. 9 people have been rescued alive, but another 8, who are believed to have been inside when the collapse happened, are still unaccounted for. Officials said the block had been built without the necessary permits. The building in Dionisio Torres, an upscale neighborhood of Fortaleza in Ceará State, collapsed at 10:28 a.m. local time yesterday. A small grocery store next to the building was damaged in the collapse, and a 30-year-old man delivering water to the shop was killed. Another delivery man managed to get out of the shop alive. Those were your news headlines for this hour from Guardian Media. Listen out for more updates in the course of the morning so you'll be on top of all the news.
Welcome back to Trinidad and Tobago. We're continuing our celebration of Calypso History Month. I don't know whose choice that was. You know, I started things off. Sparrow was my choice. That gone a long time, apparently. But this morning, we're continuing our conversations, and also we're inviting you to vote. Our megaphone technology, are you happy with the minimum wage increase? Yes or no? Just simply check on our website, cnc3.co.tt/join-cnc3. Yes or no? Let us know your thoughts. We are continuing our conversation with the Minister of Labour. We're touching on minimum wage and so much more. Start voting. Minister, there are those that believe, why not $20? That they thought $20 would be a more appropriate level to ensure standard of living.
Well, Hima, I know where that came from. That came from the opposition, who indicated that the minimum wage should have moved by $5, but they have not done the math to determine whether or not the economy can carry the $20 increase. Now, let me say this. And for example, the workers of CPEP. There is a view being espoused that the increase, the 15% increase for the CPEP workers, right, for the URP workers, that is not adequate. Hima, you go down to ground level and you talk to those CPEP people. I am on the ground. As a minister, I am on the ground because I came from the ground and I still have my links with the ground. You go to ground level and you talk to the CPEP workers or the URP workers, and you would get that feedback, that sense of happiness. They are joyful that they have gotten an increase. I mean, listen, Rome wasn't built in a day, Hima. One would want to reach an ideal figure, but it is not always possible. So that what the government at this point in time can afford, the economy can afford, it is that $2.50. With regards to the URP and CPEP, that $2.50 their salaries will be upgraded because that's the minimum wage. So that 15% would be on the new minimum wage. So the salaries of CPEP and URP will be brought up to that $17.50, and then the 15% increase would be applied.
Now, you know, I know there was a lot of statements about the CPEP and URP issue with the allocation being reduced and some wondering whether or not that's
not true. The Minister of Finance came out and disposed of that issue. That is opposition propaganda.
I also want to ask, so we looked at the OJT issue, stipends by 10% and increase the intake for the program to 8,000 trainees. How many trainees do we have now, and how are we going to see this panel out?
All right, let me point this out. Earlier this year, we requested an increase based on the registration numbers that we see. We requested an increase in the OJT program. The Minister of Finance he and his team at the ministry would have crunched the numbers to see whether or not that was possible. And the end result was an increase by 10%. And let me share this with you, because I heard Dr. Fuad Khan making a very incorrect statement about the OJT program. To wit, that these trainees would be drawing such high salaries, they will not want to leave the program and go work elsewhere. Firstly, let me disabuse that totally incorrect statement of Dr. Khan and the opposition. The OJT trainee can only stay in the program for 24 months. This is a program that was implemented in 2002 by Patrick Augustus Mervyn Manning. I always have to call his entire name to make that impact, because at that time, young persons were having severe difficulty in breaking into the labor market because all employers wanted at least 2 years minimum experience. And therefore, Mr. Manning introduced this program in 2002 for those persons, young persons between the ages of 18 to 35, but you can only stay in the program 24 months. The whole idea, that the whole philosophy revolving around this program directs that you as an employer, if you have a need, we invite you to register with us. And Hima, allow me to make a little plug here and request all the employers, private employers in Trinidad and Tobago, please register with the OJT program, because if they don't register, we don't have places to place these young persons. So that the whole thinking is at the end of 24 months, that employer would be so impressed with this young person that that employer will employ that person within the organization.
Have you done a review of the OJT program, Minister,
Excellent
to see
question.
whether or not employers are happy and employees are actually learning to do work other than file paper and make photocopies?
No. And Hima, I love that question, because since the program was implemented in 2002, there has not been an assessment. The team at the Ministry of Labor and I met with the International Labor Organization, the director, Ms. Claudia Coinarts, and her team, and we discussed this program. We requested the assistance of the ILO in assessing the program. And 2 months ago, the ILO completed the assessment of the program. The report is with us. We have met, we have discussed the report. We have the views of the employers, we have the views of the trainees, and therefore we will be making certain changes to the program, because the outcome of that assessment tells us that one of the key areas that we have to strengthen is communication. Another area that came, another point of view that surfaced in the report, the trainees who were interviewed indicated, particularly those at level 1, that we needed to take a look at the stipend paid and to increase it. And at level 5, those trainees, that's at the master's level, because we have trainees at various levels. Level 1, you have those persons at level 1, CXC and craft level training. Right. And the stipend is $2,750. Level 2 CAPE A-level diploma, the stipend paid is $3,960. Level 3, those who possess an associate degree, the stipend is $4,950. Level 4, first degree, the stipend is $6,875. And level 5, the master's degree, the stipend is $7,920. Now tell me something, Hima. You have a master's degree, okay? You have a master's degree, but nobody wants to employ you. You come on the OJT program. Would you want to stay beyond 2 years earning $7,920 with a master's degree? You would have spent 2 years in the program gaining critical experience, widening your experience base, but then you move on.
But are employers actually taking on OJTs? Because the employer base is saying now that the economy is shrinking and that they are letting people go. So if we're looking at that dichotomy in the system,
no, they don't pay the full stipend.
So are they accepting the number of OJTs that you're expecting them to accept?
Yes, indeed, and therefore where we are right now, we do have a certain amount of OJTs waiting to be placed, and that is where the increase in the numbers of the OJT program. At present, we have just over 5,000 OJTs in the program, and the increase to 8,000 means that we can place approximately 3,000 young persons.
Do you have place for 3,000 persons, looking at where the unemployment trending is going?
That is what the new director of the OJT, she and her team, they are out there encouraging state enterprises, private employers to come on board, because they are reimbursed 60% of the cost of the OJTs.
So it's getting those involved. Now, I know there are a number of issues that we
And let me just say, Hima, those OJTs at level 1 with the 10% increase, their stipend will move to $3,025, which is above the minimum wage.
Minister, I do want to also ask you, there are a number of issues looking at the fact that there were some changes to the cooperative societies elements, and I know that that was one that the commentators have described as a positive move. For those who may be unaware of the logistics of it, explain to me.
Well, this is huge with regards to the increase in the limit of withdrawals by those who are members of the credit union movement. But that too, the Minister of Finance would have been advised by the Ministry of Labor that the Section 41(1) and 3 of the Cooperative Societies Act should be amended to raise the limit we recommended from 5,000 to 40,000. Right. But in crunching the numbers, the Minister of Finance recognized that in the situation, 50,000 was reasonable. Now the cooperative movement, they are of the view that the limit should be removed completely.
They should be, yeah.
And yes, we will get there, but I addressed the movement on members of the movement on Saturday night. I had to miss CPL, but these things do happen. I'm quite sure you did not miss CPL. So I met with members of TechU Credit Union on Saturday night. I delivered the feature address at their Oakland. And on Sunday, I opened Credit Union Week, so I met with the
and our stakeholders happy.
They are very, very happy. This is huge, Hima, because simply put, if you are a member of a credit union and you have an account, and let's say you have $55,000 in the account, heaven forbid, I'm not wishing this, and you die, your beneficiary could only withdraw $5,000. Now, when that was implemented in the law, it was around 1971.
It's an archaic piece of,
the cost of a funeral, yes, would have been around $5,000. We know the cost of funerals today. Do you know funeral business is huge business? Anyhow, let's not go there. But moving from 5,000 to 50,000, it is huge. Now, the sector is very happy.
Now, Miss, I know we're working against the clock right now.
But I also want to add, in addition to that, what the Minister of Finance stated, within the credit union movement, an independent authority would be established, and that emerged from a cabinet-appointed committee that was led by my colleague, the Honorable Senator Robert Lee Hunt, and other members of the cabinet. They met with the members of the sector, and they decided they do not want to go under the central bank. So it was agreed to the establishment of this independent authority. So there is agreement on that, which will be managed.
Will that be enough oversight? Because you had the situation of the collapse in the past of the Clico Empire, which was as a result of not proper oversight.
Well,
so
all
they're not under the central bank.
This independent authority will be properly structured. It will be managed by a board comprising 4 members from the sector, 4 government, and 1 independent chairman. And once that independent authority is established, the sector, the movement will then have the facility of engaging in banking services where they could be properly monitored and managed.
Now, Minister, I know you mentioned earlier, and I want to encourage our viewers, are you happy with the minimum wage or megaphone technology? Log on to our website. It's cnc3.co.tt/join CNC3. We're getting you involved in the conversation. So far, 54% of you say no and 46% of you say yes. Minister, I want to ask about, you mentioned earlier the Productivity Council. Now, the Productivity Council was appointed under your tenure in 2017, but yet the productivity index in our country continues to decline. Is it that this board has failed in its mandate?
I would not say that the board has failed, and I want to say good morning to the former chairman of the National Productivity Council, Dr. Marlene Atz, who is at the University of the West Indies. That, although regrettably I received her resignation recently, and therefore my responsibility is to identify a replacement and to take a note to cabinet for cabinet reconstituted by way of a new person chairing that board. But Ms. Atz did submit a report. That report is being analyzed by our research and planning unit. At the end of that analysis, a report would be submitted with recommendations, which would form the basis of a note going forward to cabinet.
You know, when we talk about...
But we do have plans, and we had...
Because the business community is going to say, okay, the government is now talking about the increases in minimum wage. You're talking about paying workers better. You're talking about the public service in itself. What are we doing to ensure that these institutions are productive?
Human, that is a cause for concern, even at the level of the National Tripartite Advisory Council. That council is chaired by the Honorable Member of Parliament, Camille Robinson-Regis, our Minister of Planning and Development. And the National Tripartite Advisory Council did address, and that matter is still before NTAC with regards to identifying approaches that would look at the whole issue of how do we go about increasing the productivity level, and concomitant with that, we have to look at the work ethic in Trinidad and Tobago.
Then why is work ethic so poor? Because you talk about the Tripartite Council, and that was, we know that at one time the board collapsed because government, labor, and businesses simply could not see eye to eye.
It did not collapse.
How would you describe it?
We did not see eye to eye, and it's like a marriage, Shima.
So how are we getting this marriage working
in
now?
a marriage, you will have disagreements, severe disagreements. But my grandmother and the old people used to say, tongue and teeth does clash, but they have to live together.
So are you living together now? Is everyone working together?
We are living together in the same house. While we have agreed to disagree on certain issues, but certainly the National Tripartite Advisory Council is still operating. As a matter of fact, we met last month, Hema, and we looked at the amendments to the Industrial Relations Act, because that is a position policy paper that I took to Cabinet. Cabinet referred it to the attention of NTAC. Both the amendment to the Industrial Relations Act and the Retrenchment and Severance Benefit Act, and NTAC addressed the Retrenchment and Severance Benefit Act some time ago, and recently completed their comments on the amendment to the Industrial Relations Act.
When will we see, now, before I go into the slew of legislation, the 10 pieces of legislation, many of which are very archaic, and I know we have about 5 minutes again, Minister, but also let me ask you, you talk about the Tripartite Board, and that is an issue. Since Basdeo Pandey was Prime Minister, we've been trying to get, you also sat as a Labour leader. Why is it so difficult to get this running when you have Jamaica and Barbados able to get a board running and every single entity working together for the betterment of the economy?
Well, Hima, in the earlies, we did have some teething problems. As you know, once you have formed a new body, you will have certain challenges that you have to face. But I think that we are over the worst. Right now, we are in the process of identifying an office, not only for NTAC, but for other sections and divisions in the ministry. Once we have finalized on that, and I have been given the assurance that at least by the ending of this month, so before the end of the year, we'll have a home to establish. We have staff, we have advertised positions for NTAC, we have conducted those interviews, identified those persons, and just waiting to bring those persons on board.
The changes in legislation, I know these things have been on the books. There are many pieces of legislation that can be described as archaic and completely outdated, not relevant with modern day business environment. When are we going to see, from the retrenchment to the employment standards to everything else being changed?
All right, Hima, let me just say, when I was given the opportunity to serve as the Minister of Labour and Small Enterprise Development, going into the ministry, conducting an assessment from 2015 to now, the ministry, the team and I at the ministry, we have conducted a historic 30 consultations. To the extent, I know some of my comrades from the trade union movement have accused us of only consulting.
And no action.
But consultation forms the bedrock of any legislative change that you want to engage in, so that you bring on board the views of others.
So when will we see the changes?
We have looked. I just want to identify a few of the pieces of legislation that we have looked at, Hima. We have looked at the Cooperative Act. We have looked at the Industrial Relations Act, the Retrenchment and Severance Benefit Act. We have looked at the issue of contract labor, and a position paper was placed before Cabinet, and Cabinet agreed that that is an issue that we have to pay attention to. There's the team at the ministry, they are paying attention to the recommendation within that policy paper. We looked at the Friendly Societies Act, the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies, the Foreign Labor Contract Act, the Workmen's Compensation Act.
There are 10 pieces that you looked at. So
when
will the changes be brought in?
The changes, for example, what we are hoping, and I've had discussion with the Honorable Camille Robinson-Regis, for example, with regards to the Retrenchment and Severance Benefit Act, to ensure that another ArcelorMittal situation never occur in this country. We are hoping to bring that legislation by the end of the year, but it is dependent when the Honorable Attorney General return for him to look at the schedule, whether or not it could be accommodated. Also the amendment of the Industrial Relations Act and amendment to the Cipriani College of Labor Act. But I also want to say, Hima, out of all those consultations, we have established an HIV policy in the workplace that is being rolled on by the manager, Ms. Heather Rodney, as we speak. We have also agreed, Cabinet approved a sexual harassment policy in the workplace. That was laid in Parliament on International Women's Day on March 8th.
No, I know, Minister, I want to just touch on a few other issues before we wrap.
So that a lot is happening at the level of the Ministry of Labour.
I want to ask on the unemployment rate, because the Minister of Finance labelled or said it was 4.7%, which is almost full employment in terms of the economic jargon. But that's based on CSO figures. So even when you have responses from commentators, the last time that we looked at these figures, it was found that the CSO is 5 quarters behind. The figures that the minister presented, does that factor in Petrotrin, the possible closure and downsizing and retrenchment at Unilever and other elements of the energy sector? Is it a true reflection of the unemployment rate in our country?
We have to work with what we have at this point in time. One must remember that with regards to Petrotrin, that was not really retrenchment. It has been labeled as retrenchment. When we look at the figures coming into the Ministry of Labour, I can share with you the figures, the official figures that we have. Because, you know, in accordance with the Act, if 5 or less are retrenched, an employer is not required to submit that information, and that's one of the areas we're going to plug in the legislation. No matter how many, could be one person an employer is retrenching, you must report it to the Minister.
But is it a true reflection to say that our unemployment rate is 4.7%?
Those are the figures that we have to go with.
Do you get a sense that it's a lot more than what we're talking about?
Well, based on what comes before me, as the minister, knowing full well that there are employers in the country who may be operating under the radar and retrenching less than 5 that we would not know about, then of course your figures will not be dead on accurate because of these employers operating under the radar.
Do you get a sense that it's a huge disparity between the perception?
No, I don't get a sense that the disparity is that much, but I would not want to go based on my subjectivity. I would want to go on the data, and that is what the data we have to work with at this point in time.
Now, Minister, we have a couple of minutes, and I do have to ask you, one of the big questions coming out of the parliamentary debate yesterday, we continue to have conversations surrounding the closure of the Petrotrin refinery. We have 4 entities that have emerged since then that are up and running, but there also now is an interesting bidder by Patriotic, of which OWTU is one of the major stakeholders. There is a conversation that seems to be gaining momentum that this was possibly an election gift to the OWTU and to the Labour movement.
I sit at the level of the cabinet. I cannot share with you or the nation what is discussed because it's confidential. But what I can tell you, based on what came before the cabinet, the OWTU Patriotic was the best bid. It was the best bid, and the cabinet was influenced in that direction. When we sat and we discussed that issue, it had absolutely nothing to do with the election. It had to do with the cold hard facts before us, which one of these companies offered the government the best bid for the refinery.
And Minister, I want to ask one final question on local content in the energy sector. You have always had the issue of contracts, one for confidentiality, but service companies and the big players in the energy sector, is there going to be a local content policy where we see that local content is not only given the assurances of knowledge transfer, but a certain percentage of the workforce?
While I cannot speak for the Minister of Energy, and that question I would advise you to direct it to him, I can confirm within all those contracts with foreign companies, there is a clause for local content. Even at the level of the Work Permit Committee, which is operated with the Ministry of National Security and the Minister of Labor, we look at the local content.
Your closing comments, Minister, and before we wrap, are you happy with the minimum wage increase? Well, 56% of our viewers say no, 44% say yes. Minister, what do you want to say? I know we covered a number of issues this morning. What do you want to say to the country?
What I want to say is that firstly, I want to thank the Minister of Finance, because there are naysayers in the society who may critique him, but we have to give the Minister of Finance credit. He has stabilized this economy. He has steered this economy. When we look at Jamaica, we look at Barbados, they are in the arms of the IMF.
Jamaica's out of the IMF. Well, the economy is on the rebound.
But they were in the arms of the IMF and our colleague Barbados. If the Minister of Finance and the Honorable Prime Minister did not display calm thought with regards to the managing of the economy, we would have been in a much worse place. So I would want to say to Trinidad and Tobago, we are not in the best place, but if we all put our shoulders to the wheel and support the efforts of the government, we will all live to see a better day.
The Minister of Labour, they're giving the closing comments. I remember being a beat reporter and seeing her hold governments accountable. Today she's on the other side, trying to get the middle ground between the government and Labour. Can that happen? Well, she has a big task. Minister, thank you again. We take a short break. When we come back, we're going to have more for you, and also the results of our megaphone. Thank you to all of our voters this morning. Are you happy with the minimum wage increase from $15 to $17.50? 44% of you say yes, 56% of you say no. The minister defended the statement and the increase, saying that is what the economy can afford. We take a short break. When we come back, we begin our softer segments this morning. Pink Nick TT partying with a purpose. Adrian Chandler is on next.